women just started coming to me out of the woodwork saying, hey, I've been to those things too. I didn't get it. I didn't get anything done. You made it work. You're doing something different. Teach me what you're doing. So it came out of necessity.
Scratch Entrepreneur. True stories of remarkable people who dropped everything to turn an idea into a healthy, profitable business. Every entrepreneur who's ever read a business book has heard you need to exude confidence, never give up, work hard, use this magical system that some dude with a shabby website invented and will happily share with you for $1,997.95. Everyone wants to tell you how it works. But what they're usually telling you is simply how it worked for them. Owning a business isn't magic. It's collecting the right ideas, setting the right system, your system, and putting yourself in as many right places at right times as you can. You don't actually need to be anything but the best version of yourself. Today's guest is doing just that, her way and on her terms. She's succeeding at something that many people have found to be one of the smartest ways to make money in the world: investing in real estate. No, real estate isn't perfect. No investment strategy is, but a smart investor with a careful strategy can make good money on what is arguably one of the safer places to put your money. Whitney Nicely built her portfolio from her first $1,500 purchase to her current $1.5 million in assets. In the real estate world, that doesn't mean she's throwing money out the windows of her helicopter. It means she's making a solid, respectable living doing something that every one of our listeners could decide to do today. In this episode, Whitney shares her story and a few of her secrets. We're glad you joined us. Hey, this is Jeremy Goodrich, owner of Shine Insurance Agency and your host for the Scratch Entrepreneur podcast and the New Home Buyer's Guide. I mentioned both in this intro, which I usually don't do because our guest today kind of intersects the two pieces, and I'm super excited to have her on. Whitney Nicely is an expert property investor, speaker, and now you're a real estate coach too, which is awesome. You own more than $2.5 million in real estate assets. That's crazy. And here's the kicker. You're only 33 years old and you own all that stuff. She's going to share a little bit, tell us a little secrets, dig in a little bit. So Whitney, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. This is going to be fun.
So do you want to fill in any of the blanks that I left in that intro there?
I recently traveled to San Francisco, and a 2-bedroom, 1-bath shack is $2.5 million. So I just want to clarify that is East Tennessee property, and I actually have 15 houses and 3 apartment complexes in that. So you can actually buy something where I live.
So you live in East Tennessee, right? Is that where you grew up and stuff like that?
Yep, I'm a hometown girl. I was raised north of Knoxville, and I went to University of Tennessee in Knoxville. And if this redneck can buy houses, anybody can.
So one of the things I like to do at the beginning, just to get a little bit of insight into who you are as a human being, is ask you to take a step backwards and, tell us a quick story from growing up that kind of made you who you are today.
So I graduated from UT in 2007, right in the middle of the recession. And in the beginning part of 2008, I was working for my family's dump truck company. My mom has 4 dump truck companies. So I'm a small business, not entrepreneur because we can't spell that. And we've been in business since 1939, way before everybody wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'm the 4th generation trucker in my family. And I remember being stressed out about making payroll and people wanting to repo our equipment that we were trying to use to go make money to keep our drivers employed and paying them. And I just remember being really, really stressed out. And then one day I noticed my mom was making this big deposit. And I was like, what is that? And she said, well, I got all these houses and I rent them out and people pay me every month. And a lot of times that's how we make ends meet. And I was just like that was the first time that it hit me that real estate investing can be what saves your butt in tight times. And usually in tight times, that's when real estate investors make big money because, they're looking for those deals. And I was in my 20s. I was just out of college. My mom had always bought houses by saving up a bunch of money and then buying whatever she could and then renting it out and hoping and praying that one day she got her investment back. I needed more of a plan. I needed more of a strategy. And I spent my entire life savings buying 2 houses in 2013, like trying to figure this out the way my mom had been doing it. And I went broke trying to get rich in real estate. So, all of that combined really helped me get started. And the next year I learned about creative financing and I bought 14 houses in the next year. So I went from 2 to 14 pretty quickly. Once I had a plan, once I had a strategy, and once I stopped doing it the old, slow, boring way.
So we're going to dig all into that. I want to hear about your creative financing, and I want to hear about some of your tips as to how to do it, not the old, slow, boring way. But I want to back you up a little bit. In that first purchase you made, if I understand correctly, you spent like $1,500 on that first purchase. Is that about right?
The first piece of land I bought was $1,500. Yes, it was the very first piece. And I just happened to be at an auction on a Saturday morning and noticed that everybody was buying stuff for $500 or $1,000. And I was like, is this like the down payment or what? And the lady I was working with was like, no, they're buying this land for $500,000. And I was like, I want to buy something. And she was like, then go buy it. So I bid on the next lot that came available. I'd never seen it. I had no research, no nothing. I just, raised my hand and bought it.
So is this a vacant piece of land, or is there actually a building on this $1,500 property?
It's vacant land. And I'll tell you, the very first piece I bought was $1,200 all in, all done. But it is not very exciting because I haven't made any money off that. I will say that I bought it at I'm going to say the F word, a foreclosure auction. I paid $1,200 for a piece of land that the lady before me had lost to the bank for $69,000. Then the second piece I bought was at another auction. It was an online auction. Anybody in the world could have bought this second piece of property that I bought, but I got it and I paid $1,500 for it. And then 6 months later, I rented the driveway for $250 a month. So the driveway for $250 a month.
The place that you like park your car in front of a house?
Well, it's really cool. So the land that I bought is half-acre piece of industrial land. This is technically the second piece that I ever bought. And it's half-acre industrial land. And there's a driveway that goes between me and my neighbor. And my neighbor's this big Fortune 500 company, like on the NASDAQ, publicly traded, like really fancy guys, suits and ties, the whole nine. And they use this driveway to get to the back of their property. But what they didn't realize, what I didn't realize when I bought it, was back in 1992, the city actually took that driveway. It used to be a road. And they made it a driveway, gave the right side to me, the left side to them. So once I knew that, I went and told, Mr. Hotshot that he was driving on my driveway and I expected to be reimbursed. And that's basically how I said that. And he said, no, little real estate girl, that's impossible. We've been here since the 80s. We would have known. And I was like, all right, whatever. So sure enough, his secretary called me 2 weeks later and she was like, Miss Nicely, we're driving on your driveway over there on Prosser Road and we'd like to pay you $250 a month to continue to access that. And I was like, okay, but I've had it for 6 months. Will you pay me back rent? And she was like, yeah, that's fine. Because again, we're talking about somebody with buku-doodles of money. And I said, will you pay the taxes? And will you pay for all the maintenance and repairs? And she was like, yeah. That's fine. So I literally got all my money back in 6 months. I've had $250 a month coming in as cash flow. And then I rented the land for $500 a month. So I was getting $750 a month off a $1,500 investment. So literally, it takes no money to get started.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. So let's dig in a little bit to the tips you have. So a lot of the folks that I meet with, actually personally here in Bloomington, Indiana, where I live, we have an investors group. And then online in the YouTube spaces and the Scratch Entrepreneur spaces, they're always asking what are the best insights we have. So let's start with someone who maybe has not invested in property before or has only invested in 1 or 2 units and is just getting into the space. What are, let's say, a few you one, two, or three pieces of advice that you think are absolutely key to starting this process?
I wear a button that says I buy houses. And when I'm teaching people, I send them actually 3 buttons. So they always have a button that they can wear, because it's like wearing a badge. Like if you saw a cop and he didn't have his badge on, you'd be like, oh yeah, maybe he's off duty or whatever. But when you see him and he's got his badge on, you respect him more. So this badge says I buy houses. When you wear this badge, people respect you more, because why would you wear an ugly badge that says I buy houses if you don't buy houses? That doesn't make any sense at all. And when you don't have your badge on, you're kind of off duty, and then nobody knows that you buy houses. You have to wear your badge. You have to be proud of what you do. And it's kind of like a priest. You see a priest, you can confess to him. I'm wearing this badge. They know they can confess to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so just by wearing that badge, people come to you with what is conversation, but absolutely could turn into potential opportunities. That's the key you're getting at, I'm assuming, right?
I've literally bought a house at the grocery store and just went to the house to confirm it and sign the paperwork, because people were so desperate to get rid of this problem.
Huh. Wow. So really, piece of advice number 1 is simply to be out there, to make sure that wear that badge, or be out there asking questions, looking, maybe not even looking, just knowing when opportunities present themselves to you and being present for those.
Just being yourself and being out there and doing your normal thing, you become a magnet for people who need to get rid of these properties.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So number 1, be there, be present, be known as someone who buys houses. I buy houses. Wear it as a button if that's what you have to do. Put it on, take it off when you're out there, and you'll connect with opportunities. Awesome. What's another piece of advice?
I always make 3 offers on every house that I look at. Most investors, most agents are one-trick ponies. They're one-hit wonders. They only know one way to solve your problem. Whereas when I make 3 offers, I let that seller know that I'm a one-stop shop. They don't need to talk to 3 or 4 different people, because all those people are going to give them the same offers that I just gave them.
Wait, how can you give someone 3 offers at once?
So you can give them a cash offer like a wholesaler would, or like a fix and flip investor would. You can give them monthly payments like I prefer in lease options. You can give them long-term owner financing, or I'm an agent, so I can actually make a 4th offer and say, or you can pay me and I'll list this thing for you. You literally don't need anybody else. You found me.
So for someone who maybe didn't understand all those 4 pieces, those are essentially 4 different ways that someone can make an offer on an investment property. All have different benefits and different negatives. And if someone is looking at multiple different offers from multiple different people, then they may look at one and say, this is what I want. I want the all cash right now. I need the cash out, and I'm willing to take less money for it. Or, hey, I really want money over time, and I'm going to get more money for this, so I'll just take the, monthly over time. Or, hey, I really don't want any of these offers, but I need a realtor that can really put this out and get me money. And so what you're saying is, by putting all of those on the table, obviously you have to think through those options, make them, you're essentially creating competition inside your own offer so that the seller has nothing else they need.
Exactly, because as long as I get this contract, I won. I'm competing against myself at this point, because they don't need anybody else. Everybody else becomes irrelevant. And in the last 3 years since I've been making 3 offers on every property, nobody has wanted me to list their house. They've always seen the benefit of going with either offer number 2 or offer number 3. I've also very rarely cashed anybody out. And my cash out offers, I usually offer more than wholesalers do anyway. So I get rid of the wholesalers. Even though I'm getting a low price, I'm still giving more than what everybody else is. So I'm winning. Any offer they choose, I win.
That's great. That's super smart. And I've never thought about that before, but it totally makes sense. Okay, so suggestion number 2, obviously you have to have the cash to back it up a little bit. There's some pieces of that have to work, but is making as many options as your position can create for a seller to think about, so that you're essentially at that point competing against yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. I love that one. Is there a third?
I know everybody says follow-up, but I am terrible at follow-up. I treat real estate kind of like dating, and I just put a lot of bait out there and see who wants to chase me. So I don't chase anybody. I let them know in my offers. And I mean, I'll make completely blind offers at the grocery store because it gives them enough bait to chew on and think on. And then they want to call me back because I've clearly solved their problem. And again, I'm somebody they can trust and know that I'm going to do this deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So treat it like dating.
Skip the follow-up.
Skip the follow-up. And I think like by using number one, by being out there, by having that button on, by being known as the person who buys houses, in some ways you've established a brand and a culture so that you can skip the follow-up. You know, if you're not doing that first piece, then probably suggestion number 3 is harder because no one's going to take you seriously. But if someone's taking your offers seriously, then you don't need to follow up. It's like, hey, I'm good looking and I'd be a great date, you know, either come after me or don't. That's it.
Somebody else will. And then you'll be next in line. If I'm buying somebody else's, I'll work on you next week.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to hear one piece of advice that you have for even the most savvy investors that maybe they don't already know. And we'll talk a little bit about what you're doing in the coaching world and entrepreneurship in general. Sound good?
Awesome. Yep.
All right, this is Jeremy Goodrich with the Scratch Entrepreneur Podcast, owner of Shine Insurance Agency and your host for the Shine Insurance YouTube channel. I am here with Whitney Nicely, real estate investor, investing coach, entrepreneur herself. She's just dropping all sorts of great knowledge on us, and we're going to continue with that. Whitney, again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's great so far.
Okay. So you gave us some great advice for new investors. What about that savvy investor that says, you know what, I've been doing this for 30 years. I know exactly how to do it. I don't need any advice from somebody. What kind of advice might you throw out for that person?
I would be careful to that person because once you get comfortable, you get kind of lazy, you get kind of laxed. You start realizing that maybe you're not making as much money as you could or you should. Maybe you're not making as many offers as you could or should. And so I would really encourage that investor to re-examine their goals. They probably set some goals 30 years ago and they probably have been killing it for the last 25, but the last 5 years they've been kind of like, whatever, which is totally fine. I mean, if you want to spend, day and night on the golf course, do it to it, baby. But if you are like actually trying to buy houses and you're putting no effort into it, then you're not going to buy any houses. And then you're going to whine and complain because you're not buying any houses. But that's what you're choosing to do. So for anybody, re-examine your goals. And if your goals are to, vacation 3 weeks a month and work 1 week, then maybe you're where you want to be. But maybe you're not. Maybe you want to set some goals and put some challenges out there. Like maybe you've got 30 houses, but they all have mortgages. So maybe you want to, bring it down a little bit and pay some of those things off.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So start to take your profit that's coming in from your investment properties and put that back into paying down your loans on that or your negatives, essentially. So what kind of goals do you think are the most important for someone who has a portfolio already, who has maybe one your size or smaller or bigger? What are some benchmarks and milestones that you would look at your portfolio?
That's exactly what I've been doing this year. I had 19 houses in January and I was making pretty good money, but I thought, if I didn't have these mortgage payments, if I didn't have some of these option payments going out, I would be making a lot more money. So I'm down to 15 houses now. I've got one that's supposed to close today. I've got one that was supposed to close at the end of last month, and you know how that works. So I'm hoping and praying we'll get it done by the 15th of this month. But then I'll be down to 13 houses. But I've been able to take the profit or take what I've made on having those houses paid off and apply it to another house. So that my goal by the end of the year is to have 10 houses paid off free and clear. And so that'll take me down from $2.5 million to maybe $1.5 million. But if you have $1.5 million in real estate assets that are free and clear to your name, you can now borrow against that up to 80% to take your portfolio and plop it down towards a bigger portfolio. That's what I'm going to be looking at, is I'm going to be looking at putting 80% down on, lines of credit or whatever on the portfolio I have, so that I still have my houses. They're still bringing in money, but I take that equity and I can put it down towards like a $5 million apartment complex, or $2 million apartment complexes, or, maybe buy a vacation rental house, or maybe buy a mobile home park, or, I've taken what I consider to be like my starter investment kit, paid it off so that I can, catapult myself to a real portfolio.
Well, and I think what you hit on there is, once you have a bunch of mortgages and you've borrowed a lot, obviously people aren't going to want to loan you as much money to grow your portfolio and ultimately to be able to make more money in the end. So by backing off what you have, by selling what assets you have now and paying down those mortgages, one, you could just sit there and you could just take the income from that. That has its pros and cons, I would imagine. Or two, you could use the kind of space in your equity world, I don't know how else to say that, but to get a loan for something bigger, an apartment complex, another piece of real estate, and grow there. Is there anything wrong with sitting still in the investment world?
Well, I think if you're not learning, you're dying. So if you're not growing, you're dying slowly because of inflation. Like if you're not reinvesting and moving that money into something and bigger and better and everything. I mean, I know I would kick myself in the butt 5 years from now if I didn't get ready and take advantage of what's coming along. And another thing, the property that I hold my houses in has never gotten a mortgage. They've never borrowed money from the bank. So their credit is impeccable because they haven't done anything with it. And so when I walk into a bank and I say I got $1 million and I've never borrowed against any of these, they look at me different than if I've been in and out and done this and done that and whatever. It's just a great way to grow wealth without having to put your money, your credit, and your banking connections on the line.
That makes a lot of sense. Can you dig a little bit into that? So you have a separate entity, I'm going to assume, that is kind of the financial or the LLC or something like that associated with your investment properties. Is that fair to say?
I have 9 LLCs.
Okay. Yeah. How do you do that? What do you make LLC choices around?
The value of the properties, the purpose of the LLC. Like I've got one company that if I'm going to have something for less than a year, I just buy it, sell it, flip it, trade it, do whatever I need to do in this company. And this company is set up for short-term gains or, self-employment tax or, whatever. And then I have another company that if I'm going to hold something for more than a year, then I put it there because it's set up for long-term gains. It's set up for appreciation and depreciation. It's set up for a different tax structure. And you don't want to mush those two together.
Okay. So you don't have a different LLC for every single property you own. You have purpose for the LLCs.
My apartments are in different LLCs and they're owned by another LLC. And that's just because of foot traffic. I've just got more people in and out of the apartment complexes and my, insurance, and also because I have different partners. I have different structures. I've got one company that I have with my brother. I've got another company with my husband. I got another company by myself. I got another company by myself. I got, they're all just different. And so you just got to have different rules.
For someone who maybe hasn't done this before, it sounds like, oh my gosh, what the heck? There's so much going on here. I'm an insurance agent, right? And so I've had these conversations with investors, and it really does end up all making sense. Like sometimes I've had investors who are like telling me all this stuff. I'm like, hold on, I've got to make a tree diagram.
Exactly.
And so I will make the diagram for them. And by the end of the conversation, it'll be like, oh my God, thank you, Jeremy. Like this all makes even more sense to me, even though I'm the one that created it,
And, when I started, I bought property in my name. Like I didn't complicate it before I needed to complicate it. Like once I got on a roll, that's when my accountant, my attorney were like, hey, you need an LLC. And I was like, oh, okay, fancy.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's 100 reasons for needing that. We don't need to dig into that right now, but I probably will have a video or we could dig into some other information there. So I want to take one more quick break. And then when we come back, I want to talk about, I know that you are a coach for other investors, particularly female investors, and I'm super stoked to kind of hear how you do that and dig in a little bit. All right?
Awesome.
It's Jeremy Goodrich back with Whitney Nicely. We're learning all about investing, whether you're a first-time investor or you've been investing for 30 years. We've got some information in this conversation. Whitney, thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely. I love it.
Okay, so now you also have a coaching business for other investors and particularly female investors. Could you talk a little bit about your inspiration behind that?
When I started investing, especially when I got into creative stuff, I was going to a bunch of boot camps, a bunch of seminars, a bunch of cattle calls, basically. And there was some, boring old white dude up on the stage pitching what he did to be successful in the 80s. And I was like, gosh, shoot me. And then I'd have to go back home and translate what he said into a way I could say it and then get it to a good result. So men and women, we think about things different. We relate different. We speak different. We just process things different. And so I would have to go back and really just let it marinate a little bit and then put it into woman talk and go out and present it. And a lot of times I was talking to women anyway. There's a lot of women that are either inheriting properties from their parents or their husbands are passing and they're getting these properties and they've never had to do anything with it. And so woman to woman, I come in winning as a lady trying to help another lady. Once I realized that there was kind of a learning curve from men to women just started coming to me out of the woodwork saying, hey, I've been to those things too. I didn't get it. I didn't get anything done. You made it work. You're doing something different. Teach me what you're doing. So it came out of necessity. Women were coming to me like, please, what is going on here?
Isn't that cool? I've said a lot that if one of your intentions, we have lots of intentions in the things we do, but if one of your intentions is to help, is just, how can I help? So someone came to you at some point and you had to make a decision like, am I going to help this person? And you probably did. You probably just helped somebody, no money involved or anything like that. And then at some point it's like, a lot of people need the same thing. Maybe I can make a business out of it, or maybe I can grow this into something that actually adds to my asset base in not only a fulfilling way, like I'm helping other women, but also potentially in a financial way. Am I on track there?
Well, that's almost exactly how it happened. I was just giving out free advice, and then somebody sent me a message. They said, how much would you charge to teach me for an hour? And I was like, $97. They were like, great, send me the payment link. And I was like, how do I do that? And then I was like, okay, I did this. And then other people were like, well, I want that, but I want this too. And then I want that. And then I was like, oh, we're really going to have to get this together pretty quickly because a lot of people want this.
So it is together at this point. If a new investor or someone who's got questions coming up, particularly a female investor, is listening to this podcast, this video on our YouTube channel and says, man, those are the things I need. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you bring to the table and how they can find it?
So I have 3 different ways to work with me now. And the first entry-level way is a self-study program. And it's a little bit of hybrid group coaching, but it's called First Deal Done Fast. First deal done fast. And I really help you get your first deal done fast. Now, experienced investors come to me also and they're like, I've already done a deal. And I'm like, yeah, but you haven't done one with me. So it's still your first deal done fast with Whitney.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Okay, cool. So you can do your first deal. That's kind of one way to dig in. I'm going to give you some time at the end where you can just describe where to find all this stuff. Cool. Okay, what's the second way?
I have group coaching. So we have FDDF Plus group coaching. And that's weekly calls for 2 months, group calls and individual calls. And anytime you need me in between, I'm there to help you. And then the third way is I do live events. I do 4 live events every year. 3 of them are on different topics like multifamily apartment buying, using private money lenders. I've got a weekend where we work on that. And then I've got another weekend where we talk about Airbnb or short-term vacation rentals. So buying $1 million houses and making $40,000 a month off of them. Yes, please. And then the 4th event every year is kind of like a homecoming for me. We come to Knoxville. It's FDDF Live, and it's 4 days of me and all of my friends, all of my competition in Knoxville coming and just pouring out good content for 4 days. We drink a lot of wine. We play cash flow. We go to dinner. Show them all of my houses because that's one thing that I don't think the gurus do is they show you checks and flashy cars, but they don't actually show you the deals and the houses and the sellers and the buyers and all that. And so I'm an open book, and I show all of that at First Deal Done Fast Live every November.
Wow, that's super cool. Okay, so last question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, I plan on being in a much larger portfolio. I don't know if I'll be in a $10 million portfolio or where exactly I'll be, but I'll have more apartments than I do now. I will have a lake house myself, and I'll be coaching more, but even more streamlined than I am now. Like, I want to be the Tony Robbins of women real estate investors, or even, women who are working corporate jobs and they're not really sure real estate's what they want, but that they want to start their own company. And I mean, I've started 9 companies. I know what it's like to come out of a job and start working for yourself and the ups and downs. And so maybe I'll be coaching real estate and business in 5 years.
Okay, so take 30 seconds and pitch whatever you want, whatever your products are. We've already talked a little bit about it, but tell us a little bit more.
You can always find me on WhitneyNicely.com. Whitney like Houston, Nicely like nicely done. WhitneyNicely.com, and there's an opt-in there so that I'll send you a case study video on how I did my first 14 deals in 9 months and made 140 grand. Almost 140.
Whitney, I have like 100 more questions about real estate investment, but thank you so much for shedding just a little bit of light on the surface. I hope our listeners are inspired, and if they've already purchased an investment property, maybe this helps them really think about the next time. Thank you so much for being willing to take a half an hour and just share a little bit of your insights with us.
Oh yeah, I loved it. Thank you, Jeremy.
Special thanks to Whitney Nicely for taking the time to share her investment strategies with us. This show was recorded and produced by me, Jeremy Goodrich. The music is by Mark Vinton, and the editing is by our audio superhero, Christopher Lang. If you enjoyed this podcast, there's a couple of things we need you to do right now. First, subscribe to Scratch Entrepreneur on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you can hear future episodes as soon as we release them. While you're there, please give the show a review. We'd love to know what you like, what you didn't, and what you want to hear next. Then please share the show with whomever you think it will inspire. Until the next time, we truly appreciate you listening.